Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Mindful Parenting. And I am delighted to welcome the lovely Sarah Weller today. Sarah, I have been trying to get on to do a live for a while. The first one, I messed up the time. The second one, she very annoyingly decided to break a leg. And then we hit lockdown. So it's all been a little bit delayed. I think January you were first scheduled, weren't you, Sarah, to come in?
Yeah.
Um, I think most of you will know that I follow Sarah on Instagram, Facebook. I've attended some of her workshops, which have been fantastic, which I have shared with you guys. So I have been very eager to get her into the group so that she can share a few little pearls of wisdom, Sarah. I think the interesting was we were trying to work out how you could narrow that down to just one talk for us. So I'm already saying I need you back, but
And I think what we were going to talk about in January, I've changed because I wanted to make it more current and relevant to
mm,
what we're all experiencing right now.
absolutely, because things have changed for all of us. But I attended one of Sarah's. She did a brilliant webinar. Was that 3 weeks ago, Sarah? It was about
Mm.
3 weeks ago, wasn't it? So I was really pleased when we could actually find a date that we both could do. So I'm going to let Sarah introduce herself, and then we're going to have a little bit of a chat, and then she is going to go through her top 3 tips for her topic. And feel free to drop in with some comments. I'm once again on Be Live. I'm hoping the comments will come up, but we'll just have to wait and see. Over to you, Sarah.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I am Sarah Weller and I founded the Weller Way about 4 years ago, having come out of supporting young people in the homelessness and mental health sector. And what the Weller Way hopes and strives to do is to help families become fully functional. And by that I mean to help families communicate functionally with each other so that everyone gets their needs met. And so that children can understand their parents and parents can understand their children. Today, I wanted to talk about resilience because I think that when I've done my parenting or talks in the past, I've often asked my audience what your main parenting goal is. And a lot of people will put their hand up and say, for my child to be happy. And I completely get that because that's what we all want. There's that bias towards that they're going to have a secure life if they're happy. But I think we've somehow missed the main goal, which is for the foundation of happiness, we have to help our children become resilient. And I think that the current climate and what we've endured and experienced in the last few months since lockdown has really come home to me that resilience is must be one of our founding goals of for our children in being a parent. The thing is with resilience is it's not a naturally developed skill. And unless your child has experienced adversity, they cannot be resilient or know how to be resilient. So therefore, resilience is something that we have to teach. And we teach that by role modeling. And resilience is the real key foundation of children's mental health in terms that it helps build self-esteem, confidence. It helps with our emotional regulation. And it's also a very powerful antidote to that inner critic of perfectionism. I'm going to talk a bit more about that. So I just thought it was useful to talk to you about it today in terms of a current climate, and also because I think that our children's future is very different to ours. I think our climate, our economic, social, political and environmental climate is so different from when we were growing up, and it's constantly changing. And I think also resilience is not only relevant for all our lives, but it's really going to be key in helping our children transition out of lockdown back into the world and being able to
Absolutely.
be fully functional in that world. I only had a conversation today with a mum whose teenage girls are expressing real fear about going, not necessarily going back to school because there's lots of sort of procedures in place, but going back out to the park, and playing with their friends outside and meeting up with their friends, going to a coffee shop, all that sort of stuff, normal teenage life stuff. They've become, which was taken for granted and gave them all their joy and their connection. They're now quite fearful of going back into that.
I think it's very interesting how it's affected the children in unexpected ways. It's not always the big things. I've just come from the park. I've met up with some friends. We're all at primary school, not we, the kids. And do you know what? Seeing a group, Sarah knows I've got teenagers. Seeing a group of teenagers just together, just normally, it's just made my whole week. Because they're kind of social distancing, in a teenage way anyway, because obviously then nobody ever really sits next to anybody as a teenager. So they're all kind of distanced, but they're just sat chilling and chatting. Lovely. But I have to provide that. And that ability has been taken away from them. So I think I can see where, that odd thing of, I can't pick somebody else up in my car, because they're not part of my bubble. And then the girls going, oh, can't we just pick them? Oh no, we can't pick them up.
And that's a really good point, because teenagers thrive on spontaneity.
They don't have any ability to do that now.
No, they don't. That's been taken away from them. And, the whole point, the whole process of planning is not something they're used to.
No. Oh, I know. They're having to plan everywhere, aren't they? I mean, even for the younger kids, we've got parents in here with babies all the way up. But one of the big things that have been coming out is that challenge of homeschooling, and actually it's in many ways much easier having teenagers because they have a degree of understanding processes and how they work, and they're used to following a timetable because that's the structure of school. I'm not saying we had a school timetable throughout all of this, because we haven't, but that same process applies. Where at primary school, they don't have any of that. The teacher says we're doing this, and they go, oh, okay. Bell rings, and out they go for lunch. There's no, they have no say in that process. So I think it's been really interesting that actually a lot of the younger kids, where you'd think they'd all be a bit like, oh, I'm learning from home, this is all great, have actually really hated it.
Yeah, I've picked up a real Marmite effect from the families I work with. So some children have absolutely thrived with the homeschooling. Some of those children have got dyslexia or things like that, which they find school quite challenging. So that homeschooling has actually suited them because
I've seen exactly the same thing. The children who have any kind of either educational needs or need some mental or emotional support have loved being homeschooled.
And what I've found is a lot of high achieving children have really struggled because they haven't been getting that external feedback that they need.
Well done, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily put their trust into their parents' explanation of things when they can't grasp. I mean, I am at,
we don't. Who are we?
I know, but I hold my hands up. I am terrible at maths and science and all those, things. But hey ho.
Yeah, it is. As you said, Marmite is exactly is exactly the term. And I think, unfortunately, as parents in the middle of all of this, it's where we find that middle ground of. This is why I was so eager to get you in now while we're on lockdown, if that makes sense, because
Mm.
I think you're absolutely right. We need some tools to deal not just with now, but this transition, because for those of you who are in the UK, we're now in that transition, and we've got people here from all over the world, and it is so different in every country. It's flabbergasting. But I think from here, we've got light at the end of our tunnel. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but I've spoken to different camps of people over the last 10 days, and the opinions are, it's just, as everything has been with this pandemic, have been both ends of that scale. But I just think about the kids in the middle dealing with this, of some parents going, it's all going to go back to normal, it's all going to be fine, and other parents going, I don't want you to leave the house because it's not safe. And all our kids are in that middle, aren't they? Having to find their way forward.
Yes, and it's very confusing messages when over the past 4 months they have been told that the world isn't a safe place
Mm.
through social media and through the news, and particularly the language that the government have been using. The language they've used has almost been, I think, very warlike. And it's interesting that it's the sort of thinking behind that is that people are motivated by fear
Mm.
rather than motivated by risk. And I think that's really interesting. And also people seem to react to very firm advice, whereas when it was sort of ambiguous, nobody liked it. We like being
Really
told.
interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah,
When it was
yeah.
this is the way it's got to be, I'm really sorry, everybody
Mm,
went, oh, okay. And then as soon as
mm,
it became a bit, well, could possibly
mm,
be,
mm, mm,
everybody was up in arms. It was
mm.
the language I thought was really interesting. And I'd be interested to see where this next stage takes us as well, with, less in the
And
UK, but, less daily announcements and all that type of thing is. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Mind you, I don't think the kids necessarily are. I don't know about in other households, but I don't sit my kids down at 5 o'clock and do the daily announcement with them every day. But I think keeping them aware. A synopsis is what I tend to give. This is what it means now. Nothing's
mm,
changed, or this has changed, or
mm, mm,
and I think, again, depending on where you are, we've got my mum, who is on the high vulnerability list. So they've seen it from that point of view. So it's been quite interesting, because I've seen how they approach the different scales of where everyone sits in it. I can pop down to the shop and that's fine, and they don't worry about that, but they really worry about my mum,
mm,
because they understand that there's a difference in that risk.
mm, mm. Yeah.
But so what are your tips for us for helping our, well, not just our kids, but for us, for how can we help them develop this skill of resilience? Because I agree with you. I think that adversity. Again, Sarah knows me well. We've had chats, and one of my daughters was horribly bullied in year four and five, to the point where we removed her from that school, and she is the happiest go lucky kid, and that mask made me smile, because I remember it very, very well, to the point where 18 months in, she'd have to get herself to such an emotive state on a Sunday, ready for the Monday, that she just broke. She just broke one Sunday and just cried and cried and cried, and went, I just don't think I can do it. I can't
Mm,
put, because I'm like, no, come on, today will be a different day, and I'm going to do this, and
mm,
you're going to do that, and she's going to do this, and it's all going to be, thinking that, again, she had already developed that resilience, and that resilience was seeing her through. But that adversity created that resilience.
mm. It's really interesting what your response was,
Mm.
that I get fed back a lot by the children I work with to say that mums relentless positivity is very annoying
Yeah.
and not helpful or
Yeah.
useful,
Yeah.
because there's that dichotomy and mismatch between not what the step that's been missed is the empathy and the validation that I'm finding it hard, but you're saying, oh, don't worry about it, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And there's that, and that creates that barrier.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think the thing is with, I think bullying, well, we can talk another day about bullying, but it's a very emotive subject for parents, I think, because you do this guarding, protective thing. Um, and I needed her to know from early doors, which is what we set into place. This was at the end of the 18 months, quite early on, of setting up that, knowing that she had to feel safe, and she had that ability to. I was very lucky because she'll always talk to me, so I'm very thankful for that. But that resilience that she built up over those 18 months, for everybody trying different approaches. She was having counselling, there were parents brought in, I was brought in, I was in every day at one point, having meetings every single day at 2 o'clock meeting with a notebook, what had happened that day. It was just unbelievable. But seeing how she coped through all those different stages, now it's things that I know would affect my other daughter just fly off her. She doesn't even, she clocks them on the radar and goes. So, but that's resilience.
It is, and it's you've taught that through the strength of your relationship, and that's one of the key things with resilience, is that our biggest strength to help our children is our relationship, and modeling resilience, and in terms of how we cope with difficulties in life, and we don't try and mask or discount or not talk about it. Or so just by sharing our stories of how we find things difficult and showing our vulnerability, and that's one of Brené Brown's big things, isn't it, as a parent, that we mustn't be afraid to share our vulnerability, is key, because that's how children learn, and that's how we normalize it, how we normalize adversity.
How do we find that balance as a parent between, say at the moment, a lot of parents are really struggling emotionally with this, but are having to find that strength to keep going and still put meals on the table and not break down while you're grating the cheese? Or how do we find that balance as a parent to show that degree of vulnerability but still be that, you have to have that degree of strength that your child knows, or your children know, when times are tough, whatever they need to say, you are the person that they can speak to. How do we find that balance?
That's a really good question. I think resilience is all about finding our own inner resources, absolutely. And if we don't have our inner resources in place, whatever those are, we cannot be that role model. So I'm not talking about vulnerability in forms of breaking down every 5 minutes and showing how upset we are. I don't mean that. I mean just being open and honest with our children, that if we feel that we are triggered that day, to actually explain that I am stressed today, and I've got maybe too many work deadlines going on. I've got or I'm trying to support my mum, or or whatever. Just be perfectly honest with all the things you've got to deal with that day.
I see. I see what you mean.
So that they can see the facts of what you're dealing with, and explain that. So if I'm short-tempered with you, this is because of what's going on with me, not you. And ask for children's cooperation as well. Don't be frightened of asking them. What could they contribute to helping you, deal with manage the overload.
I think
Even
that's
small children.
Yeah, do you know, I agree. I mean, I got my kids helping. I mean, forget now, but from very young, And I think you're right. I think cooperation is the key. But I hope a lot of parents out there hear what you're saying with this, Sarah, because I think there's a degree of, you know, this perfection thing again that we'll come back to.
Mm.
I'm the perfect parent, so therefore I can show no cracks in the
Yeah.
mask that I put on every day, and my
And
house is beautiful, and you
and
know,
didn't we all, well, or not all, but a lot of people I saw put that mask on in the beginning of like stocking up their homes perfectly with food, doing homeschooling perfectly, actually boasting on social media, and showing pictures of their homeschooling little areas and,
mm,
and all of that helped feed, um, a sense of, for some people who weren't coping so well, a sort of sense of incapability,
mm,
which I didn't like at all.
mm,
We all cope in different ways. And there was this high energy, wasn't there, in the beginning
yeah,
about, carry on, get on with it.
yeah,
And then suddenly, slowly, as the realities of doing the massive juggle and the balancing of everything, it's worn everybody's
yeah,
energies down completely. And so I think it's really worth, I encourage the families I work with to connect in with the week's timetable ahead of the week so that you're very well, so that therefore you're able to cope more with the curveballs that are thrown at
yeah,
you because you actually know what you're expected to do generally, and you can talk about any potential curveballs. So so I think forewarned is forearmed, if you like.
yeah. That makes really good sense actually, because you're absolutely right. The curveballs are are still there as they are in life, aren't they? They
Mm,
are,
mm,
regardless of lockdown
mm,
or not. But I think
mm.
it's you know, is
And
it?
for me, it's simple things like, who's going to walk the dog today because I have got, clients at 5 and 6 o'clock.
Mm,
And so fine, I know it sounds stupid, but for me, that would be a worry. How am I going? It's a small
mm,
worry, I know, but how am I going to fit the dog walk in? So just having that plan of asking for someone to help who's going to walk the dog on that day really helps me. Yeah,
well,
cope
and
with
the
the day.
nice thing is you're talking about that cooperation again, aren't you?
Mm, mm,
So you're planning, you're not planning to the nth degree, but you're seeing where that week goes for all of you. And then there's a
mm,
cooperation of, well, this day I need help with that because this is
mm,
going on. And I think for,
mm,
for, for all of our parents watching this, regardless of whether you've got little kids or older kids, whether you're working or not working with that cooperation sounds like a really good idea to start integrating in if you're not doing it already.
yeah, and that really ties in with the science of resilience because we tend to think of resilience, I think, in isolation, that it's a bucket load of coping strategies, but actually it's much more than that. The science of resilience is that resilience emerges from multiple processes, and one of those multiple processes that we've just talked about is absolutely cooperation.
Mm, interesting.
So the resilience of a child is distributed. It's distributed amongst all the relationships that they have around them. So, and that's not necessarily just parents. It can be, school, community links, grandparents, any. It's about supportive systems in a child's life.
Right. And that resilience flows between all of that. They're able to take those skills and use them across that board.
Yes.
Yes,
So
it's one of those things you don't really think about, do you? On a on that basis of you where you need that resilience, because of course it hits everywhere.
exactly. So the science of resilience is about the social systems that you have in place that work for you. And you will struggle to be resilient if you don't have those systems in place or they're not available to you.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is one of the capable parenting is just one of those systems. It's not the only system. So what I mean by that is to not feel that the whole bucket load of resilience teaching lies with you as a parent.
Okay.
So it's other close relationships, it's helping your child together in partnership with school develop things like growth mindset, learning from mistakes, learning from failure. So it's very much working with school and community in terms of their extracurricular experiences as well, to help them bounce back when things don't go their way. And that's the key thing about resilience. It's about that ability to bounce back and also to normalize that life is difficult. And because life is difficult, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. So I think a lot of children, when they find things difficult or hard, they internalize it as there's something wrong with me, because everyone else, they have a false sense of what everyone else is doing, often through mind reading or, not seeing reality, because fear, for example, changes what we see and changes our perception. So therefore, we can think that because things are going wrong for us, or there's something wrong with me. And so it's it's really important to lay the foundations with our children that life is difficult and we can't do anything about that. Life is uncertain. We can't do anything about that. But what we can do is we can control our thoughts, our words, our actions, and our behaviours.
Yeah, it does. It does make perfect sense, because I can see how that at the moment is like everything else in that bubble. So, for example, with one of my daughters, she was saying, I'd said, text out to so and so, excuse me, you want to meet up with so and so and so, text out and see what happens. And I said to her a couple of days later, what's happened? She went, they haven't replied. That's just me. That was the first thing she said. It's just me. They've read it, they haven't replied. And I went, really? You think that's just you? And she was like, yes, because they replied to that. And again, we had to have a bit of a chat, because, look at my phone. Look how many messages people have sent me that I've scrolled through. I haven't really read them. But I've scrolled through and gone, I must come back to that.
And then you don't, you forget.
And then another message has come in the meantime, and you never responded to the first one. So it's I can see even on those smaller things, but I think at the moment where our kids don't have access to those extracurricular, not just activities, but friendships and supports and learning opportunities. It does feel like all of that has been passed on to parents. Not only are we homeschooling, but all of these skills that we know. I'm all for learning through play. It's one of, in fact, that's how you and I first got chatting 2 or 3 years ago. I'm a great believer that in those early years, learning through play is just the number one. And actually, that doesn't really. I looked at those teenagers in the field today, and it's exactly the same. So with that missing from their lives at the moment, I think for a lot of parents as if all of that is now in their pot, and they're becoming quite overwhelmed with it, because they can see the knock on. Speaking to parents in this group, and to different friendship groups, and they can see the difficulties that the children are going through, but they don't have. It's not that they don't have the skill sets, because of course they do, but the thing that the child's upset about, they can't replace. They can't take them to a football match. They can't, meet up with nanny and granddad. They can't be like for like replaced. And I think parents are finding that really overwhelming.
and I can hear what you're saying in that. To summarize that, it's your choices of distraction techniques have been taken away.
Mm.
And our distraction techniques, therefore, have come solely down to us as parents. You know, okay, find time for baking, find time for playing in the garden, find time, everything revolves around us facilitating something. But I think that whole, I said this in the beginning, I said that I felt it was unfair for the education system to pass the responsibility or the feeling of the responsibility for education over to parents. I just felt that was really unfair, because when do you ever do a job which you haven't applied for and that you're not qualified or experienced to do? And as a result, I felt that it could possibly cause a lot of disconnection and confusion between the role of mum and dad and the role of bringing, or rather the implications of bringing school into home. So bringing those stresses of school and learning for some children who find it more difficult into home. So
I agree. I think it's been
anybody's,
really hard. I think a lot of people find it really, really hard.
and I've had a lot of parents reaching out to me, and I've just said, if it's causing battles, don't do it. Because the cost of the disconnection that you will experience from this, you may not get that back. Because children have elephant brains, don't they? As we know.
Oh yes. For certain
Yes, we know
things, normally involving us.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I would really
That's
encourage.
it's interesting advice, Sarah, because I would say that's been one of the biggest things that I've people have been feeding back to me in this group is that they feel this clashing. And I think the difficulty is, I think actually for a majority of parents, they would find a way through, and there are techniques, and there are other people there that could throw things in. There are support groups, there are Facebook groups, but nobody tells you. We were just sent an email from whichever school your kids are at going, right, be lucky. And I also think that's caused a massive discord from kids and from parents, that the fact that each school has handled it so differently, and the level of support that's come from the schools there has been the range. I mean, you must have seen this as well. The range has just been staggering, absolutely
Yes.
staggering.
And also, I think there's been some underlying assumption from schools that every child has their own device to work from.
Oh, I think that got dispelled quite quickly, didn't it?
Yeah. When mine were all at primary school, we had one desktop computer, and we had to timetable time on it after school. So there has been that assumption. But anyway, I just feel that it's not worth the battle, and particularly because most teachers are now saying that they're going to repeat all the learning once children are at school anyway.
Yes, I was hearing a similar thing, and I thought, well, if the parents don't take to the streets for that one, I don't know what will get us going, because we've just, for working parents, it's been really tough. Really, a lot of people I know are scheduling shifts, and you've done
And I
all of
think
that.
there's also a discounting of the valuable lessons that we can take from being in the home and sharing communal responsibility, sharing cooking, sharing cleaning, clearing up, all those independent life skills. They're just as valid.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
our children need all those skills for when they leave home, if they leave home. And so I don't want parents to think that, play or household, life is not as valid as the school lessons either.
But we've had no option on that one, unfortunately, because it's that balance for me. My obviously my girls are in secondary school. They have a lot of work set. So I would have loved to say, right, for 2 weeks we're going to go through completely different how to wash a car and how to make a bed and whatever it may well be. But actually they've been working all day. So I don't then go at 4 o'clock, right, it's time to learn about cooking spaghetti. But if we'd had that as part, as you said, home learning skills, we want all the kids to take off the last 2 weeks of this academic year and go camping for 2 weeks because they're great skills, or decorate a room and whatever it may well be. As you said, but that's academia for you, isn't it? That inability to value the things that you can't quantify.
And also to be aware as well that in Scandinavian countries they don't do any formal learning till age 7 anyway.
No,
And that doesn't hinder
no, they're not
any.
behind in any way.
No,
No,
no, no. So
no. So
to bear that in mind if you have little ones.
yes, I agree, and I think it's lovely to hear somebody else, take that pressure off. Because I think there has been a lot of society pressure as well.
And I always say to the parents I coach is to listen to yourself and feel what is right for you. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing or what anyone else is telling you to do. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. We have to, at the end of the day, we want to help our children make good decisions, trusting their guts and their instinct. And if we're not doing that ourselves, then how can we encourage them to do the same?
That's quite a learning curve for some parents as well, though.
It is. It takes courage.
It does take courage.
It takes courage, but also it means giving you. I am here now, right now, to give you permission to go and do that.
Lovely, exactly. But I know it sounds silly, but sometimes I think as adults we're the same as our kids in many ways. We won't listen to ourselves. Say, do you know what's all right just to leave the schooling for today? We will be okay. But when they go, no. But if somebody else went, do you know what, just leave it and climb trees, I'd go, yeah. So it is that external permission, having somebody say that. So thank you for that, Sarah.
Well, I had to do it myself the other day. I'd been working pretty much full on and doing my webinar Saturday morning as well, and I gave myself permission to have a garden day, and I pretended I was on holiday, and I poured myself Bacardi and Coke in the garden like I would have when I was on holiday, and I felt so much better because I did it with permission, and I went into it fully, happy that I'd made that decision.
Yeah,
and I planned it.
Yeah, I think it's it's very important to take those, whether it's a moment or a day, or not because you've had enough and you're walking out, but which tends to be one of the things that I do. I have enough and I go and walk the dog. But actually I've been trying to schedule, maybe not in the whole week, but part of my day, and I'll just go, right, I'm we're redoing our garden at the moment, and just sitting in it, and got a particular cheeky blackbird who's just got the most beautiful voice.
And I'm lucky that I can do that. I appreciate that when I wouldn't have been able to do that when my 4 children were, living at home. But it goes back to what the Mental Health Foundation really advocate is a happy hour every day. So it's the happy hour is not necking cocktails. It is finding something that you don't have to do. So when you're talking with people, it could, they would think, oh, well, my happy hour is walking the dog. No, it's not, because you have to walk the dog. That's not something you choose to do. You have to. So happy hour together is something that you choose that's on top of what you already do. And it doesn't matter if you can't do it every day, but it's just nice if you can fit it in into some days.
Is that something you do individually or as a family?
No, as a family,
Hmm.
as a family. But you could, but also you might want to do it for yourself on some days
Mm.
as well, if you're able to, and if even if you can't find an hour, to find half an hour or just a slot of time. And I know that doesn't the research say that the average mother only has 17 minutes to herself a day or something like that. But if you can do what I encourage, which is to delete, delegate, and simplify, you may find some little more grabbing time over 17 minutes to do
Do you
something.
want to give us a quick little synopsis of what that means? I know because I've been to your ones before, but can you give us a little brief overview of what you mean by that?
What, by delete, delegate, and simplify, do
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah.
DDS. It means looking at what's not working for you. So that's the delete. So well, personally, as an exercise, I would write every single thing that you do in a day, literally everything, and then go through and write DDS against any of them. So can you get rid of it? How important is this? Does it align with my values? Is it necessary? Is it a need or a want? If it's a want, then it can be discussed that it's let go of. If it's a need, it might not be negotiable. So that's the delete. Then the delegate is going back to what we were saying earlier about cooperation.
Mm.
What can I ask for help with, or who can I ask for help? So it's that thing of not being the martyr, not feeling that you're responsible for everybody and everybody's feelings and everybody's behaviours, and asking for help. So it is the antidote of being a perfectionist, because you will have to put those expectations aside and let people do things in their own way and be happy enough with the fact that they do their own way. So that's your delegate. And then your simplify is to literally look at your schedule. And again, going back to see, is this schedule sustainable? And I think the feedback that I've been reading from so many groups on social media is almost a relief from some parents that they have been able to simplify their schedule, because they're not charging about doing extracurricular stuff
Absolutely.
for more than one child. They're not having to, so that sort of incessant time thing has relaxed a bit. And I'd really, if you're happier with that, take notice that you're happier with that, and maybe not rush into that a busy schedule post lockdown.
Yeah, brilliant. You've told me those before, and I still think they're brilliant. But I'm going to redo them. I did them a while ago, but things have changed, and I
Yeah,
think they're
so
one of those you need to redo.
when you make your list, put a W for want or an N for need against it, and see what the balance between wants and needs are.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah.
It's an
I think it
interesting
would. It
exercise.
definitely would be for me at the moment. I think because there are different things calling me in lots of different ways, and I'm having a little bit of pivoting. So that would be a good exercise once I've done this next stage of my planning to go through that and just go, right, where in this next
Because
set.
it's very difficult to be resilient when we feel overwhelmed.
Mm.
So it's a core, like, foundation exercise to do for us to be able to stay resilient and not be overwhelmed.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Very good. I'll go back and I'll redo my one that I did before because it's changed.
It will do. So it's worth doing every quarter, I think.
Yeah, pre and post lockdown.
Yeah.
It's all going to look very different. Is there Are there any other? I know there's lots of information you could share with us, Sarah, but are there any? I'm just conscious that we've hit kind of 45 minutes. Are there any other things you want to cover with that resilience?
I think I'll just summarize, I think, what my 3 tips were what
Please.
are. One is role modeling to our children that life's difficulties and challenges will always be there, but we have choices about how we react. So that I talked about sharing our vulnerability and sharing the ways that you cope and what you find useful. I think going on it with the whole growth mindset model that I know you post about a lot as well, is giving empathy when children make mistakes. Because if children internalize your responses as judgment, they will not understand that it's okay to make mistakes. And it's by making mistakes and getting some reflective points about how we could do things differently the next time, that's what builds resilience. And I also think it's important to parent the child in front of you and not make judgments about their coping abilities compared to their friend, for example.
Yeah. Or the other, or another sibling.
Yeah, indeed. So, sort of to try not to do peas in the pod parenting, and each child that you have will find some things easy that the other one finds difficult and vice versa. So we never know. I think it helps to always praise for efforts and behaviours based on values, because then that can help children develop the why doing things is important. Helping them understand that there's value in the journey, not the destination. And whatever we do, whatever road or pathway we take is a valuable one, because it's us being curious, it's us being exploring. And we can never reach our full potential if we don't use wonder and curiosity, exploration and experimentation. And I love the quote from the guy that designed the light bulb, Edison. He could have said that he had 200,000 failures before he discovered the light bulb, but actually his quote is that he had 200,000 opportunities to get it right.
Yeah.
And so it's just flipping it.
Yeah, absolutely. That flipping it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So just helping children realize that all experiences are as valuable as each other. And the key part of helping them with resilience is that ability to help them know how to bounce back. So I've just got a really nice acronym for bounce back that I thought I'd end with, and I'm happy to send it to you, that you can post it in the group.
Yes, please.
Because it's a really nice, what I call fridge sheet. You can put it on the fridge.
I like those.
Yeah.
I like those.
Yeah, they're good, aren't they? So bounce back. B, bad times don't last. O, other people can help you if you talk to them. U, unhelpful thinking makes you feel worse. N, nobody is perfect. C, concentrate on finding the good things and rather than discounting them. Anxiety, often we discount the positives. E, everybody suffers and that's normal. We've talked about that. B, and the back is B, blame fairly. So rather than blaming ourselves when things go wrong, accept that often it's a combination of things. And sometimes it's not necessarily anybody's fault, it just comes down to sheer bad luck or sheer bad timing. A, accept what we can change and what we can't. And it's about that acceptance that sometimes we have to accept that we can't have certainty. And I think that's a key lesson
You
from
listen at the
this.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah. C is catastrophizing makes things a lot worse. And K is keep perspective. I
Lovely.
think that,
Love that. That's a really clever
yeah,
one.
I think so. It's not mine. I found it on somewhere. I think I may have found it on the NHS website, you know.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hidden somewhere that nobody can find. But yeah, lovely. I'm pleased you found it, Sarah.
They do have their uses.
They do. They do. They do. Treasure trove once again of lots and lots of different things for us to think about, but also implement.
Yes.
I think this is the key, isn't it?
And I think the biggest thing I want to say is that don't be disheartened or annoyed or discouraged if your children are finding it difficult at the moment. Because as I've said, this is probably the first time ever, unless you have exceptional circumstances, that a lot of our children will have experienced adversity. So this is a really, really good time to start teaching resilience.
No, brilliant. Can you make sure you pop in all your contact details in the comments underneath, if you can,
I will.
please? I will also post them again into the group so that people have them. And that bounce back looks great.
Yeah, I'll send that over to you.
And I can forward it on. Sarah, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to booking our next one because we've got lots of subjects that you could come into the group about. Have you got any workshops or webinars or anything running at the moment that you want to share with us?
I'm just about to record a webinar that's going to go onto my website for a small fee.
Okay.
And that's part of my mission, I guess, for the next 6 months is to make my work more accessible to some people who can't access coaching, is to record more webinars. Yeah.
Please do, because they're really good.
It's work in progress, so I'll let you know when I've done it.
Well, and I'll ping the things up, but we'll obviously put a link to your website. But when you do those, do let me know, because they'd have, honestly, the Parents Group would have so much, they'd get so much value from them.
Thank you. I've also got a course up on Udemy that's more designed for teenagers. It's called Who Am I?
Oh.
And that's all about teaching teens growth mindset and helping them discover their skills and strengths through various exercises. And I've developed that with Katie Redfern of Meaningful Recruitment. And I'm really excited about that because it took me out my comfort zone so far into creating avatar cartoons.
Oh, I'd have loved to see your face trying to do those.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, funny.
So
Can
I'm
you put the
very
link to that
excited
up?
about
Because
that.
I'd be interested in that for the girls.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with that because when we did our research, we couldn't find anything that was really modern in terms of its visual look and using avatar cartoons. So I'm proud of it.
I would really like to see that, definitely, and that would definitely be one that I think quite a few people here have got teenagers.
I think it's just a question of helping teenagers be very much mindful and aware of their soft skills rather than the grades that they get, which is equally important in achieving their dreams.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very, very much. Always love hearing you. Always come out with you. I know you start off with a little bit of structure and then it always goes off, which I love because then more. Hopefully we can get you back in again. We'd love to do that. And all the connections we'll put underneath this in the page and on the group. And I will also put this up on Insta, so if anybody wants to access it that way, they can. Sarah, you stay there. I'm going to close this off and we're going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much for anybody that was watching. Again, I don't know because my BeLive hasn't connected in. And as long as it's all up there, then we'll be fine. And we will catch up with you soon. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Goodbye.